They threw a black woman onto the street in the dead of night, not knowing she was a billionaire. No one moved. The neighborhood stayed silent as she held her newborn twins close, their cries breaking through the wind. A few phones lifted. Laughter echoed. Someone whispered, "She probably deserved it." The streetlights caught the shimmer of her tears. To them, she was invisible, a woman too poor, too ordinary to matter. But behind that silence lived a storm. Because the woman they mocked was Idara Vale, and before morning came, the balance of power would shift forever. Keep watching to see how one night turned humiliation into justice, and if you think you'd see it coming, stay to find out. It was past midnight in Garnet Heights when the pounding started. Cliff Bain's fist hit the door like a hammer. Behind him, Rhea crossed her arms, a smirk painted on her face. Rory, the building manager, waited with a toolbox, eager to obey. Lena opened the door, Mira and Nova wrapped in the only blanket she owned. Her voice trembled as she begged, "Please, just until morning. They're only 3 days old." Cliff shoved a paper toward her. "Eviction notice, effective immediately," he barked. Rhea lifted her phone, recording like it was a late-night show. "Another tenant who can't pay her bills," she said with a laugh. Rory began throwing her things into the hallway. Tiny clothes, diapers scattering across the floor. Lena tried to catch them, her babies crying louder. The sound mixed with laughter from the hall. To them, it was entertainment. To her, it was the sound of her world breaking. Outside, the neighbors watched from half-open curtains, no one daring to help. The cold hit harder than she expected. The concrete stole the warmth from her skin. Lena sat on the sidewalk, holding her daughters close as their small breaths brushed against her neck. The hospital blanket was too thin to fight the wind. Across the street, porch lights flickered on. Faces peeked through blinds, then disappeared. Not one door opened. Not one word was spoken. In that silence, she realized she had become invisible, something to look at, not someone to help. Her arms ached. Her body still weak from giving birth. Her mind screamed for rest, for shelter, for mercy. None came. She looked down at Mira and Nova. Their tiny hands moved as if reaching for something the world refused to give. A calm rose inside her, sharper than rage. If no one would see her now, they would remember her soon. This humiliation would not be the end. It would be the start. Headlights swept over the curb. A luxury car slowed near her. For one heartbeat, hope flickered. Maybe they would stop. Maybe someone cared. The window slid down. A woman in pearls leaned forward. "Lock the doors, Grant," she said softly, "before she asks for money." The car sped away, taillights disappearing into the dark. The words stung more than the cold. Grant and Celeste Harrow. She caught their names from the license plate frame. Harrow Therapeutics, bold and polished. The irony burned. A company that claimed to heal the world, yet its owners couldn't spare a glance for a mother in the street. The babies whimpered, the sound small and helpless. Lena rocked them gently, whispering promises they couldn't yet understand. She memorized the Harrows' faces, the perfect smiles, the indifference. One day, she thought, the people who looked through her will learn what it feels like to be seen too late. The wind howled through the empty street. Lena reached into the diaper bag and pulled out a phone wrapped in cloth, hidden since the day she moved in. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She dialed one number. When the line clicked, a calm voice answered, "Avery Cole, speaking." Lena's voice was steady now. "It's time. Start Protocol Dawn." There was no surprise on the other end, only quiet acknowledgement. "Are you certain, Ms. Vale?" She looked at her sleeping daughters. Their tiny faces were peaceful, untouched by the cruelty of the night. "Absolutely certain," she said. "No one hurts my children and walks away." The call ended. She pressed the phone to her chest, whispering, "You'll never grow up afraid." In that moment, the shivering woman on the sidewalk disappeared. Idara Vale took her place, the woman the world would soon remember, not as a victim, but as the storm they never saw coming. As the city slept, Idara sat awake beneath the neon glow, the cold still clinging to her skin. To understand what came next, you'd have to know who she really was, and why she'd hidden it. Lena Moore didn't exist. That name was a mask, a shield Idara Vale had built for herself. Beneath the worn clothes and tired eyes lived one of the most powerful women in the country. Her story began in a cramped apartment where her parents had died waiting for medicine they couldn't afford. Idara was 19, brilliant and furious. She created a generic version of that same drug in her college lab. Within a decade, she turned it into a pharmaceutical empire. Within 2, she owned companies in manufacturing, real estate, and finance. Money gave her comfort, but took something else: perspective. She forgot what it meant to worry about rent or food. One night, while reading about the rising mortality rate among poor mothers, she felt a guilt that wouldn't fade. That's when she decided to vanish. For 6 months, she would live as the people her success had left behind. That choice, meant to teach her empathy, would soon become her greatest test. Under her new name, Idara rented a small studio in Garnet Heights. She stocked her pantry with canned food, paid bills with cash, and folded her life into 2 suitcases. She took a job at a grocery store. The pay barely covered diapers and rent, but she stayed. Each purchase became a calculation. Each dollar spent felt like surrender. The exhaustion of the poor settled into her bones. Still, she smiled, listened, and watched. In the waiting lines for food stamps, she heard stories of eviction, of illness, of people doing everything right yet losing everything anyway. Her journal filled with notes about broken systems, unfair policies, and the quiet courage of people who kept trying. 6 months later, her experiment was nearly over. She planned to reveal herself, donate millions, and start fixing what she had witnessed. She didn't know that the very night she chose to return to her real life, her landlord would choose to destroy it. Before that night, there had been Malik. He worked in construction. Steady hands, quiet humor, and a heart that saw through the disguise. He treated Lena like she was enough, even when she owned nothing. They met over spilled coffee and late-night talks about hope. Malik dreamed of opening his own repair business one day. He wanted a house, a safe place for the family he never thought he'd have. When Lena found out she was pregnant, she planned to tell him the truth, to reveal who she really was and build that dream together. But fate didn't wait. A fall at a job site ended his life instantly. No safety gear, no insurance, no compensation. Just silence from the company that called him replaceable. Idara buried him with her own hands, under her false name. That day, she made a promise: to fight for every worker, every mother, every person like Malik who never got to live the life they deserved. The morning after the eviction, Idara walked into the Arcadia Grand Hotel under her real name. The concierge blinked twice before realizing who she was. Within minutes, staff rushed to prepare the penthouse. She moved through the lobby like someone stepping back into her own skin. The exhaustion clung to her, but so did purpose. In the suite, she laid Mira and Nova in warm blankets, finally letting them sleep. Then she opened her laptop. Emails, contracts, market reports, all waiting for her return. She didn't rest. Her mind was already working. Names, addresses, and debts scrolled across the screen. She whispered them aloud, one by one, as if summoning ghosts. By dawn, a list was complete. Cliff Baines, Rhea Baines, Rory Pike, Grant, and Celeste Harrow, each name a thread in a web of cruelty. She promised herself they would all face her, not with rage, but with justice. By sunrise, Idara's team had gathered everything. Cliff Baines owned 47 buildings across Harborview. On paper, he looked like a self-made man, praised in the local press for revitalizing old neighborhoods. In truth, his empire was built on fear. 200 families had been forced out in the last year alone. He bought their buildings cheap, raised the rent, and called it progress. His fortune, roughly $30 million, was almost entirely leveraged through Larkspur Bank and Trust. One weak link, and the whole structure would collapse. Idara scrolled through photos of Cliff smiling at ribbon cuttings, shaking hands with city officials. She read his quotes about responsibility and the value of hard work. Her jaw tightened. "Let's start with his bank," she said quietly. "When the money goes, the mask follows." Outside the hotel window, Harborview was waking up. For Cliff Baines, it would be the beginning of his longest day. By the time dawn broke, her orders were already moving through silent channels, the first domino in a chain that would erase him. Larkspur Bank and Trust was the lifeline of Cliff Baines's empire. Every building, every dollar of his supposed wealth was borrowed from it. Without that bank, he was nothing but debt in a suit. Idara understood that perfectly. By the next morning, her team had done what few could imagine. Through a chain of quiet purchases and overnight transactions, she now owned Larkspur Bank and Trust completely. The same bank that funded Cliff's cruelty now answered to her. Her first order was precise: recall every loan under his name. No delays, no negotiation, no mercy. Every unpaid cent was due immediately. Legal, final, devastating. The emails went out before sunrise. The letters were printed, signed, and sealed. The city still slept, but Cliff's financial world had already begun to collapse. Idara watched the trading screens flicker with satisfaction. Power didn't need to shout. It only needed to move silently. "By the time he wakes up," she whispered, "his kingdom will already be gone." Hours later, Rhea Baines posted a video titled "Evicting the Irresponsible." The clip showed Lena crying on the sidewalk, clutching her babies while Cliff shouted orders. Rhea's laugh echoed over the footage. The internet devoured it. Within a day, it spread across Harborview. Thousands of views, comments filled with cruelty. "Some people never learn," one wrote. "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes," said another. Rhea loved the attention. She gave interviews, mocking the broke single mom as if it were comedy. Idara saw it, just once. She didn't flinch, didn't rage. She turned off the sound and said quietly, "Let them laugh while they still can." While Rhea soaked in attention, Idara's legal team assembled a report that would end the show for good. Every cruel click was a countdown. When the truth arrived, that laughter would turn to silence, and then to shame. The following evening, the first file landed on Idara's desk. It detailed years of theft by Rory Pike, the building manager, security deposits stolen, records falsified, and Cliff knew he had been taking a cut all along. The documentation was airtight: receipts, emails, even bank transfers. Idara read them one by one, her expression calm but her pulse steady with purpose. She didn't need anger. She had proof, and proof was power. She sent the entire file to the district attorney's office, attached with a generous donation earmarked for housing fraud enforcement. Justice would arrive not in fury, but in funding. Across Harborview, the first subpoenas were already being drafted. Cliff didn't know it yet, but the fuse was lit beneath him. Idara closed the folder, exhaled slowly, and said, "You built your fortune on other people's fear. Now you'll learn how fast fear burns." Cliff woke to sunlight streaming through his kitchen window and the smell of fresh coffee. It felt like another perfect day. His phone buzzed once, then again, then again. First came his lawyer, something about loan recalls, then his bank manager, unpaid balances, urgent notices, then the police, an official inquiry. Within hours, his name turned from investor to suspect. He barked orders, called Rhea, shouted at assistants, demanded explanations, but no one answered. His emails bounced back. His lines went dead. The stability he had built was evaporating. By noon, the press was at his gate. By afternoon, he was screaming into a phone that no longer connected. He had no idea who had pulled the strings, only that every knot tightened at once. Far away, Idara watched the chaos unfold and whispered, "Pride always falls quietly before it hits the ground." While Cliff's empire crumbled, Idara turned to her next target, Grant and Celeste Harrow. The couple who had rolled up their car window while her babies cried now ran Harrow Therapeutics, a mid-size pharmaceutical company hungry for expansion. Their profits came from products built with materials supplied by several smaller firms. On paper, those firms looked independent. In reality, Idara owned 60% of their chain through layered subsidiaries. Every pill they sold, every dollar they earned, passed through her unseen hands. She studied their pending merger with a national distributor worth millions. A single call could stop it. She made that call. The deal vanished overnight. Then she raised their raw material prices by 300%. Legal, strategic, final. Their empire began to tremble before lunch. Stock prices dipped, investors called, partners withdrew. Idara closed her laptop and murmured, "They drove past my pain. Let's see if they can drive past this." But that was only the beginning. By morning, 2 more calls sealed their fate. The first was short and final. She canceled Harrow Therapeutics' pending merger with the national distributor. The deal that was supposed to double their value dissolved in seconds. No explanation, no warning, just gone. The second call went to her logistics division. "Triple their material prices," she said. The order went out across subsidiaries in minutes. Legal, documented, irreversible. By noon, Grant Harrow's company was bleeding money. Warehouses stalled, shipments delayed, investors started asking questions. Celeste called their suppliers in panic, only to find polite refusals and rising costs. Idara watched the chaos unfold from her office window, her tone steady, her face unreadable. To her, this wasn't revenge. It was precision. Power used like a scalpel, clean, silent, and devastating. She closed her laptop and whispered to herself, "They turned away from mercy. Let's see how they handle consequence." It started as a rumor, a clip surfacing online, grainy but clear. The night of the eviction. Grant's voice, Celeste's words. "Lock the doors, Grant, before she asks for money." The internet erupted. The video spread faster than wildfire. News anchors called it a symbol of moral decay among the elite. Hashtags flooded every platform. Harrow Therapeutics' stock plummeted. Within 24 hours, the company's board demanded Grant's resignation. Celeste's charity invitations disappeared. Friends who once praised them stopped returning calls. Sponsors withdrew. Their smiles vanished from the society pages. Idara didn't leak the footage. She didn't need to. Truth had a way of finding light when the world was ready to see. For the first time, the couple who looked down on others found themselves at the bottom. And the fall, as Idara knew, was always faster than the climb. While the Harrows struggled to control their scandal, Cliff Baines faced something worse. 200 families he had evicted filed a collective lawsuit. Their lawyers were the best in the country, paid by Idara's foundation, working pro bono. Rhea served him divorce papers the same week. She called it self-preservation. Rory Pike, the building manager, was arrested first. Within hours, he confessed to embezzlement and pointed straight to Cliff. News of the investigation spread through Harborview like fire. Tenants from every one of Cliff's 47 buildings came forward. The same pattern, the same cruelty. Cliff's empire, once his pride, was now evidence. Reporters called him the landlord of misery. His interviews from years before played on repeat, words that now mocked him. Hard work deserves reward. For the families he had broken, justice had finally found its way home. Weeks later, the call came from Larkspur Bank and Trust, his own lifeline, now his executioner. Every loan Cliff had ever taken was being recalled. The properties he mortgaged were seized, one by one. He tried to declare bankruptcy, but the paperwork disappeared into a maze of filings and legal barriers. Idara's attorneys had seen to that. Every loophole he once used was now sealed shut. When the notices arrived, Cliff stared at the words until they blurred. Foreclosure, default, seizure. Each envelope carried another piece of his downfall. The news outlets that once praised him now displayed images of boarded buildings and angry tenants. His empire, built on debt and cruelty, had been nothing but sand, and Idara had pulled away the tide. For the first time, Cliff understood what helplessness felt like. The silence in his empty office was louder than any scream. Harrow Therapeutics was running dry. With no merger and tripled costs, the company couldn't sustain operations. Layoffs followed. Investors fled. Grant sold personal assets to keep the lights on, but it wasn't enough. Their daughter, Amelia, became a target at school. Classmates whispered, teachers avoided eye contact. The same news clip that ruined her parents' careers haunted her online. Celeste tried to call Morrow Global Holdings, desperate to speak to someone, anyone. The operator politely replied, "Ms. Vale does not take unsolicited calls." Then silence. Grant sat in his empty office staring at framed photos from the charity galas they once ruled. The pride in his eyes looked foolish now. Celeste wept quietly beside him. The life they had built on status was gone. The doors that once opened for them now stayed locked. They finally knew what it felt like to be unseen. And far above the city, Idara watched, not with vengeance but with a calm born of justice fulfilled. But justice, she knew, wasn't finished. The final step wasn't destruction, it was revelation. 2 weeks later, the 5th Street Assistance Center was crowded with people waiting for help. Fluorescent lights hummed above the worn linoleum floor. Idara sat behind a desk, dressed simply, her hair tied back. To everyone there, she was just another volunteer taking intake forms. No one knew the truth. That morning's schedule was her own design. Cliff Baines, Grant Harrow, Celeste Harrow. 3 names, 1 hour. Fate arranged neatly in black ink. Outside, the rain fell in thin sheets against the windows. Inside, she flipped through files, calm and focused. The world had taken everything from these people, and now they would face the one person they had once tried to destroy. This wasn't revenge, it was revelation. Idara wanted them to look into her eyes and see the weight of their choices. Mercy would not be free. As the clock ticked closer to 10, she glanced toward the door. Soon, all 3 would walk through it. The storm that started on that cold street was about to come full circle. Cliff Baines sat across from the intake officer, shoulders slumped, eyes dull. He answered questions like a man running out of words. "Employment history?" she asked. "None," he muttered. "Lost everything." She nodded and wrote quietly. "Any dependents?" "No, just me." Her pen stopped. "Do you believe people in poverty deserve dignity, Mr. Baines?" He looked up, startled. The voice was calm, but the eyes, those eyes, felt too familiar. The room shrank around him. Recognition hit like ice. "You," he whispered. "It's you." She didn't smile. "That's the problem, isn't it? You only care who people are when it's too late." Cliff's breath hitched. He tried to speak, but the words refused to come. The weight of what he had done pressed down on him, heavier than any debt. For the first time in his life, Cliff Baines felt small. Not poor. Small. And that was a start. Grant and Celeste Harrow arrived next, escorted to Idara's desk. They looked out of place among the rows of worn chairs and tired faces. Grant straightened his jacket out of habit. Celeste clutched her purse as if it might still matter. "Good morning," Idara said softly. "Please, sit." They obeyed, exchanging confused glances. "We're here about the employment placement," Grant began. Idara nodded, flipping through their file. "Yes," she said. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrow, it's good to see you again." Celeste frowned. "Have we met?" Idara removed her glasses, and the air shifted. The calm volunteer vanished. Before them sat the woman they had left on the street 6 months earlier. "The woman from the sidewalk," Celeste whispered. Grant's voice cracked. "It can't be." Idara leaned forward. "It is." The silence stretched between them, filled with the echoes of their cruelty. Celeste lowered her gaze. Grant couldn't meet her eyes. For the first time, shame replaced arrogance. Idara opened 3 folders on the desk. Her tone stayed even, measured, leaving no room for argument. "Mr. Baines," she said, "you'll manage Juniper Court, one of my affordable housing complexes. Minimum wage. You'll listen, repair, and learn respect from the people you once ignored." Cliff nodded weakly, tears threatening. She turned to the Harrows. "You two will work at East Side Haven Clinic 3 days each week. You'll assist patients who can't afford care anywhere else. You'll hold their hands. You'll learn that healing isn't a luxury." Grant swallowed hard. "And if we say no?" Idara met his gaze. "Then every door closes. Credit, contracts, work. This is your chance to rebuild something honest." Her voice softened slightly. "Take it, or lose everything again." No one answered. The choice hung heavy, like a sentence suspended between mercy and ruin. Grant's voice broke the silence first. "You could have destroyed us," he said. "Why didn't you?" Idara didn't hesitate. "Because destruction is simple. Justice is harder." The room fell still. Outside, rain streaked the glass like tears. She continued. "Revenge satisfies anger. Justice rebuilds what was broken. I don't want you ruined. I want you changed." Cliff bowed his head, ashamed. Celeste pressed her hands together, trembling. Grant's shoulders sagged. None of them had anything left to hide behind. Idara closed the folders and stood. "The rest of your life starts when you walk out that door. Whether it's redemption or repetition, that's on you." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Grant whispered, "We'll take it." Idara nodded once. "Good." Her voice was quiet but certain. "Then maybe there's hope left for all of us." They left the room that day changed, or at least trying to be. Time would tell who they became. 6 months later, a report arrived on Idara's desk from Juniper Court. It described a man who showed up early every morning, tool belt around his waist, greeting tenants by name. Cliff Baines had once treated people like numbers. Now he fixed their sinks, painted their walls, and asked how their children were doing. At first, the residents didn't trust him. They watched, waiting for the arrogance to return. But slowly, his tone softened. His patience grew. When a tenant missed rent, he didn't threaten eviction. He asked if she needed groceries. For the first time, people began calling him Cliff instead of Mr. Baines. It was a small thing, but to him it felt like grace. He learned to listen more than he spoke, to apologize without defense. Each day, he repaired more than apartments. He repaired himself. Some nights he stood outside the building and whispered, "Thank you for letting me stay." And though no one heard, the words still mattered. Across town, at East Side Haven Clinic, Grant and Celeste Harrow moved through crowded hallways in simple uniforms. Celeste helped patients fill out forms, while Grant restocked supplies and carried wheelchairs. They were learning how to serve instead of being served. At first, it was awkward. Grant's hands, once used for signing contracts, now trembled while cleaning bandages. Celeste struggled to listen to stories of pain without tears. But each day, something shifted. They began to remember names. Maya, the mother working 2 jobs. Mr. Lee, the retired teacher who still smiled through illness. Gratitude replaced pity. At home, their daughter Amelia attended public school for the first time. She came home laughing about new friends, about real things. Pizza, homework, art class. There were no more charity galas or whispered judgments, just dinner together, laughter, and peace. The Harrows had lost their world of wealth, but in its place they found something deeper, the kind of life that no money could buy. In Washington, D.C., the cameras flashed as Idara Vale took her seat before Congress. Behind her stood a new banner, the Dignity First Foundation. She spoke not as a billionaire, but as a woman who had once slept on a sidewalk with her newborn daughters. Her testimony was calm, clear, and impossible to ignore. She presented data, stories, and reform plans for housing and maternal health care, policies born not from theory, but from experience. Lawmakers listened. Some shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Others nodded, realizing the depth behind her words. Idara had once used money to build an empire. Now she used it to rebuild a system. Her foundation funded eviction relief, safety inspections, prenatal care for low-income mothers. When she finished, the room was silent. Change, she realized, didn't happen in boardrooms. It began where compassion met courage. That day, the headlines called her the woman who turned power into policy. But to Idara, it was simply justice, finally written into law. Late one evening, Idara sat in her study, watching Mira and Nova play on the carpet. Their laughter filled the room, soft and bright. She smiled, feeling both joy and ache. She thought of Malik, the man who had believed in kindness without knowing her secret. She thought of that cold night when she had been thrown into the street and how that pain had become her teacher. She whispered to her daughters, "You'll grow up safe, but never forget. Kindness is your greatest inheritance." The girls looked up and giggled, too young to understand. But one day they would. They would know that their mother had turned humiliation into hope for thousands. Idara stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker. Every building, every life she had touched, reminded her that empathy was the truest form of wealth. "Respect people," she murmured, "before you ask who they are." She closed her eyes and smiled. For the first time, peace didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of something better. They had thrown a black mother into the street, and from that cruelty came a lesson the world would never forget. Cliff, the Harrows, even the city itself, each had been forced to relearn what dignity truly meant. Idara's story was not about revenge. It was about restoration. She had proven that poverty is not a moral failure and that justice can exist without hatred. Systems could change when guided by empathy, courage, and accountability. Her foundation grew, lives improved. But what mattered most was unseen, the quiet ripple of respect moving through people who had once been blind to it. As the camera of life pulled back, Idara's voice echoed softly. "Power means nothing if it doesn't protect the powerless." If this story touched you, share it. Let someone else see that kindness can be stronger than cruelty. And if you believe in stories where dignity wins, subscribe, so together we can keep that light alive.